right, so let's talk about this worksheet. So we've got the heart here. We've got blood being pumped out of the heart, right, away from the heart. So if it's being away from the heart, that's an artery, right? In fact, this is the pulmonary artery. It's bringing the blood to the lungs. Now, if we take a look and think about the lungs, we breathe in oxygen and CO2. So in this air that we breathe in, is there going to be a lot of oxygen or a lot of CO2? We're breathing this in our lungs. There's going to be a lot of oxygen. So what we're going to do is you're going to fill in high, because there's a high concentration of oxygen into that box. And then low amount of CO2, because this is air you just breathed in. There's a low amount of CO2, high amount of oxygen. Now, in our bloodstream, it's the opposite. It's already gone and dropped off all of its oxygen at our cells, and so it's coming in to the lungs, to the capillaries by the lungs, with a low oxygen. What's going to happen here is diffusion. Remember, it goes from a high concentration to a low concentration. So here we have high CO2. It's going to diffuse into the lungs, and we're going to breathe out that CO2. With the oxygen, we have a high amount of oxygen and a low. So the oxygen is going to diffuse from the lungs into the bloodstream. All right. So in the middle here, we've got our capillaries, right? And after we pick up this oxygen, we're going to have a high amount of oxygen here and a low amount of CO2 here. So you're going to fill in these high O2, low CO2. And then it's heading back to the heart. So this would be considered a vein. It's going towards the heart. Now, once it gets back into the heart, it's going to be pumped to the rest of the body. So we've got an artery here carrying it away from the body, right? And remember, this just got oxygen from the lungs. So it's going to be high in oxygen, low in CO2. Now, its goal is to bring it to our cells. Our cells need oxygen. So our cells have a low amount of O2 and a high amount of CO2. The CO2 is their waste. They want to get rid of it. So again, what's going to happen here is high to low. We've got high oxygen here, low oxygen here. So we would draw an arrow from high to low. Because you're on a computer, you don't have to worry about doing that, but high oxygen to low oxygen. The CO2 is higher here in the cells than in the blood vessel. So it's going to go from high to low. So as our bloodstream's going past, it's dropping off the oxygen, picking up the CO2. And so after it drops it off, right, it got rid of a lot of its oxygen. It gave it to the cells so they could function. So it's going to be low in oxygen. And it picked up all the waste, the CO2, so high in CO2. And then it's going to bring it back towards the heart. And so this would be considered a vein because it's bringing it back to the heart. So I need you to double click on this image and fill in any of the blanks.